Hi there, folks, and welcome to the very first installment of Varsity 360. I'm Mark Coleman from the Virginia Varsity Sports Network, V2SN. Very pleased to be partnered with Fredericksburg.com, the online home of the Freelance Star, to bring you each week the top stories in Fredericksburg Regional High School sports. We'll recap and review the previous week's games and highlights, take a look at some of the wonderful individual performances, and preview some of the big games and matches coming up in the coming week. We'll also bring in some coaches and student athletes along the way to add their insight and opinion. Do everything we can to make this an informative and enjoyable situation for you. Certainly appreciate you watching. Looking forward to bringing you each week Varsity 360 on Fredericksburg.com. And maybe one of the things that I'm really looking forward to each week, I get a chance to chat with some of my very good friends from FLS Varsity. FLS Varsity, of course, part of the undertaking by the Freelance Star, focusing on area high school sports. Keep up with all the latest in the high school sports scene for the area, you can log on to flsvarsity.com and also follow them on Twitter at FLSVarsity. This week I've got two of my favorites. Look at this. From FLS Varsity we have the assistant sports editor Justin Rice and sports reporter extraordinaire Taft Coghill Jr. Fellas, great to see you. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too, Mark.
I'm not the assistant sports editor extraordinaire?
Well, yes, you are, Justin. Of course you are to me, but I had to add a third word to Taft's title, so certainly appreciate you guys joining me here, and looking forward to an exciting set of shows here. These folks were, of course, part of the crew that we worked with for the Gridiron Report. Looking forward to continuing that with Varsity 360 for the coming year. Well, fellas, we're pretty far into the high school winter sports season. But seeing as how this is our first installment of this show, I thought maybe we'd take a little bit of time to sort of recap where we are on some of the sports, sports scene, as it were. And let's start with boys basketball. And just for fun, we sort of put together a little top five here. So why don't we just start with that? We'll count down a la David Letterman here with our top five. Coming in at number 5 in the boys basketball, we have Spotsylvania. What do we know about this team, Taft?
Well, they have 6 of their top 7 players back from last year, so that chemistry from last year is carried over to this year. They haven't quite put it all together as you would expect, but they're coming along, and they've picked up a few key wins along the way.
I think with both Spotsy schools, the schedule in the winter and the days off we've had has somehow landed on Spotsy game days. So they've both played sort of fewer games than everybody else, and they're still going to try to piece it together and have had to sort of overcome that. Oh, we're playing. Oh, we're not playing. Oh, we're practicing. Oh, we're not practicing.
Right. Yeah, it has been sort of a difficult schedule. I guess Spotsy has missed 4 games. Sorry, Spotsy has missed 4 days already of school so far, snow days. I think Stafford might have 4 as well.
And they all seem to have been falling on Tuesdays and Fridays,
yeah,
which are, of course, basketball days. Yeah.
So Spotsy comes in at number 5 in our boys basketball top 5. At number 4, we have Massaponics.
Yeah, Massaponics, they're kind of got a two-headed monster going right now with Aaron McFarland and Logan Sechrist. McFarland's a crafty guard. He's been a starter now for, I think, 3 years now, and his experience has shown he's averaging about 17, 18 points a game, and he has Logan Sechrist there to take pressure off him, scoring whenever necessary.
Yeah, I think for Massaponics, they're a team that they've always been able to score. I mean, the last couple of years especially, they've been able to put up points. They're going to play defense when it matters. I think that's going to be the question I would have for Massaponics.
At number 3 in our top 5 in the boys basketball, we have Chancellor, the Chargers, coming in at number 3, Taft.
Yeah, they seem to have built off of that experience last year of reaching the Group AA Division IV state quarterfinals, and they seem to be buying into second-year coach Rob Rick and his system. They lost Chris Holmes and Ryan Greer, a couple of key guys off of that team, but guys like Josh James and Matt King have stepped in and filled those voids.
Strong team and a good program that they've got going on there.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. At number 2 in our top 5 for the boys basketball, we have Culpeper.
Yes, and Culpeper, kind of like Massaponics, they have a bit of a two-headed monster, but their guys are both in the backcourt with Henry Butler and Adrian Struther, and those guys, they've been surrounded by a bunch of people, a bunch of pieces off of their JV championship team from last year. They've all come up, and they probably have the deepest Culpeper team that James Thompson, the coach, has seen in quite a while.
You think the deepest, because they've had some nice teams the last few years, for sure.
Yeah, they really have. But when I spoke to Thompson earlier this year, he said that some of those teams might have had more, another third or fourth piece that might have been more talented. But as far as collection of depth, this is the deepest they've been.
Excellent. Well, and not a whole lot of surprise, number one in our top 5 for the boys basketball, Colonial Forge. This team sort of has really separated itself from the rest of the pack.
Yeah, they've gelled, and they picked up a really nice win over private school Bishop Ireton this year. They've beaten Massaponax. They've had, just like the football team had some of those signature wins, they've had a signature win or two themselves.
In terms of being able to make a run into the playoffs and knowing that you have to perform well in the tournaments, the regular season only gives you seeding. The tournaments are what's going to make you advance. How do you feel like these teams are situated to make those playoff runs?
That's always tricky because it depends on matchups. You never know what else is out there in the state, and it could be one of those teams out there, say like Chancellor last year. They made it to the regional championship game. They run up against a Grafton team who was pretty loaded, and then the next round they get bounced because they run up against a Potomac Falls team that's also pretty loaded. So the playoffs are pretty tricky because you never know what is out there waiting on you.
I think Culpeper, when you talk about making deep runs, I think Culpeper the last few years has been, maybe the best team, pound for pound. Mm-hmm. And I think you would think that they have another shot at going far.
Yeah, they're in that 3A though, which is really tough. You had those Richmond schools, and there were previous 5A schools, previous AAA schools like Petersburg and John Marshall and Thomas Jefferson. Those schools were powerhouses in AAA. They've dropped down to 3A now. That's going to make it pretty tough on Culpeper there.
How about in terms of individual performers on the boys' side? Who are some of the names that jump out?
Right away, Henry Butler from Culpeper is probably one of the top few players in this area. Also, Marco Haskins from Colonial Forge, and Adrian Struther from Culpeper. Darius Carter from Spotsylvania. He's put together a nice season so far, and also Aaron McFarland, who I mentioned earlier, from Massaponax.
And don't leave off Monty Gould from Colonial Beach. Just put up his 1,000th career point. This kid's been a scorer since he's been at the Beach. I think this is not a bad Beach team this year. Certainly maybe not on the AAA level, but on the level they play on, probably a pretty strong Beach team. And Monty Gould is a guy that can definitely score points.
Yeah, he's the area's leading scorer, so yeah, don't want to leave him out.
Right, averaging about 23 points right now, it looks like. So
yeah,
certainly strong performance there.
Yeah.
Justin, it sounds like this is going to be an important week for some of the schools in terms of conference matchups, getting in a lot of their conference play in this coming week. We're actually recording this on Monday, so some of the games will be actually played before this actually gets aired. But depending on which conference you're in, in Conference 22, which is of course Cortland and Chancellor and King George and Eastern View, you're going to play everybody twice. You're going to have sort of a margin for error. In Conference 4 and Conference 15 and Conference 27, you may play some of these schools twice, but only one counts. So you're talking about you have basically 5 conference games. James Monroe's boys team has 5 conference games that count. 3 of those are this week, including Culpeper at Culpeper on Friday. I think, JM, like Spotsy, JM's schedule was sort of decimated in the early part because of the weather and because the football team went so far. They've not played a ton of games yet. Now all those makeups, here they are, and this is a big week for JM, especially going into Friday. Culpeper, there's probably some basketball rivalryness there, and I think Culpeper looks certainly like one of the better teams in Conference 27. And we're only talking about 2 teams coming out of Conference 27. We know Culpeper's good, maybe Brentsville's not bad, we think Spotsy's not bad, JM, there's not a lot of room for error there. So it's a big week for teams like JM's boys, JM's girls that are looking at 2 and 3 conference games. And as these next few weeks come down, there's going to be more teams facing weeks like that where they're going to have 2 and 3 conference games in a conference where you only play 5 or 6 conference games. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So important games coming up, certainly. Well, that's a look at the boys side on basketball, and let's take a look now at the girls basketball. On the girls basketball side, we'll do a top 5 as well, and we'll start with number 5, Colonial Beach. The Lady Drifters are showing some stuff, huh?
Yeah, that's another team that made a deep run into the postseason last year, and they're kind of reaping the benefits of that despite losing a couple of key players. But Denia Newman and also Sydney Curry, they've picked up the slack, and Coach Keith Dickerson has kind of gone down to VCU and gotten some lessons with the Havoc-style defense, and that's paying dividends for them. They picked up a really impressive win over 5A North Stafford. I mean, North Stafford's struggling, but for a school the size of Colonial Beach to knock off that team is pretty impressive.
Fellas, what do you think with that up-tempo type offense or attack, offense and defense, the Havoc style? Those kinds of schemes, do they work pretty well at the high school level? I mean, it requires some discipline, but it seems like they really can be effective.
If you have athletes and ball handlers, get up there and run, because, I mean, ball handlers, I think, is what generally separates the better teams from the less successful teams. Teams that have 2 or 3 kids, and again, we'll get going down our list, and it'll be all about teams that have more than one girl that can handle the ball.
Right.
If you can get after those teams that don't have multiple girls and really force some of those non-ball handlers to put the ball on the floor, to dribble, to make a pass, that is only positive. If you've got the athletes to run, I think that's where it's at.
Yeah. So Colonial Beach at number 5. Number 4 on our girls basketball top 5, we have Stafford.
Yes, the Indians, they haven't quite put it all together yet because they've had some situations where they haven't had all of their girls for certain games, but they do have a really outstanding player in Kendall Parker. She's an outstanding shooter, outstanding ball handler. They have Grace Epps that provides some size and length in the paint and everything, getting rebounds and scoring, and also the freshman Kayla Henderson at point guard. So they're a team to be reckoned with in that conference.
I talked to a district coach this week about Grace Epps, actually, and her size and her aggressiveness, and she's a girl that, and if you've got size, and Grace is about 5'10" or so, and you have aggressiveness, that's going to get you far, I think, going after rebounds and so on. And for Stafford to have that inside-outside combination, you got to think that's going to pay off for him at some point.
Yeah, no matter what level you're talking about, if you've got that kind of attack, it's going to be it's probably going to be effective.
Yeah.
Well, at number 3 in our girls top 5 on the basketball side, we have Caroline.
Yeah, the Cavaliers, they're currently, as we tape this, they're on a 9-game winning streak, and they've suffered 2 losses down there in the Richmond area, but they're 10-2 right now. They have a really strong front court with Bo Hayes and Hope Tolliver, who's averaging around 19 a game, and also Jayla McNeil. And then in the backcourt, you have Jasmine Moore, who's quite a young guard there for them.
Excellent.
I think Tolliver and Hayes were for a team that maybe didn't do quite as well as they hoped last year. Still, Tolliver and Hayes last year looked like you could certainly look at them and say these two are going to be good players coming up for sure.
Yeah.
Moving on to number 2 in our top 5 for girls, we have Chancellor.
Yeah, and I guess anybody who followed girls basketball in the area could kind of see this coming with Chancellor, because you had Cortland and Eastonview had dominated the Battlefield District last year, and pretty much everybody from both of those 2 teams are gone, and Chancellor seemed to have the most returning talent, and Emily Green, a sharpshooter, so Jayla Harris averaging around 18 a game as a point guard, and Rashawn Harrison and Sydney Jackson. I mean, that group right there, they're really tough to deal with.
Yeah, it's definitely been coming for Chancellor, and they've had some pieces the last couple of years, but haven't quite put it all together. I think now as Cortland's sort of taken a step backwards this year, and I think Chancellor is primed to sort of fill in that. It's probably the best girls team in Spotsylvania County. Sort
of an interesting trend or dynamic. It exists at high school, at college as well, when you're having to replenish your roster 4 years or more frequently than that. When you have that magical year, when you've got some really key players, particularly upperclassmen, and your opponents or your rivals maybe don't have quite that strong of a schedule or strong of a roster, it's sort of those are the seasons you like to remember, right?
Yeah, I think this will be Chancellor's year as far as that. Yeah.
Right. Well, at number 1 in our girls basketball top 5, not a repeat of the boys. We've got Colonial Forge again. They've got some strong basketball at Forge.
And I don't see how anybody would even consider voting for anybody but Colonial Forge. They're, I think, certainly just head and shoulders above everybody else in the area.
Yeah, they're absolutely loaded, and they might not just be the best team this year. They may be the best team this area perhaps has ever seen as far as girls basketball.
Wow, that's a pretty strong statement. The best team this area has ever seen.
Yes, they're good.
Wow.
Yeah, they're so deep. They have so many different girls that can run at you. They like to play the up-tempo style. They like to push, and If they've got 5 girls on the court, 4 of them can handle the basketball and dribble it and cause pressure and score points in the breakaway.
Justin, I think you wrote an article just this past week about them, and you didn't you?
Yeah, certainly, yeah.
About, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, well, we're talking about just the battle they have with, frankly, the competition. Around here, they're just head and shoulders above a lot of the teams they face. So they're working hard to sort of improve themselves in many ways and sort of stay focused on the next game. You don't want to let somebody sneak up on you.
Sure.
But at the same time, Colonial Forge's sights are set on a much higher level than just the conference and maybe even just the region. State tournament last year, they want to be back there this year.
But they could have some trouble in the region, though, because, first off, you have a team like Stonewall Jackson up in Manassas that could be waiting
Sure.
on them. And also to the south, you have Princess Anne and some of those schools. But Colonial Forge being in that south region, and they have to deal with some of those Virginia Beach schools a little earlier than perhaps they would like. So they have to make sure they don't take any nights off and just make sure they're hitting on all cylinders when they do get to the regional playoffs.
Any standout players on this team? And there are a lot of great girls that are playing, but any names come to mind?
Well, I think Kenya Holland's going to Princeton, and you sort of start with her. She's not actually lighting it up this year, but she's a girl who can, if you're backing off her, she can lay down threes, and as good as anybody, almost boy or girl in the area. And then you go inside, and you have Jayla Osborne, and then they've got Nicole Collins, Nia Washington. It's just they've got a flood of girls. I think that's certainly the difference with Colonial Forge. Their top 5 is very good, but their next 3, their next 4 girls, they're also all very good.
Right,
yeah.
right. Yeah. An impressive team there. You heard it. That was Taft that said this might be the best, at least girls basketball team. You want to go out on a limb and say it's maybe the best basketball team, or is it? You're going to pull back from that one. The areas
I'll pull back from that one, but I think it's certainly by the time it's all said and done, I wouldn't be shocked if they did earn that title as well.
Well, I think if you're talking about Stafford County, I think that's certainly in the mix. Stafford County has not been a historical basketball hotbed until maybe the last few years. Mountain View's had some success. Now Colonial Forge on the girls' side has had some success. And I think certainly Colonial Forge could earn that title of best girls or boys team in Stafford County history. I think that's certainly
they may already have that, by the way.
Excellent. All right. Well, that's our look at the basketball on both the boys and the girls' side, our top 5. Well, let's take a look now at wrestling. And Justin Rice, you put together a wrestling notepad not that long ago, and you had some rankings in there. I'm not sure if you got much feedback on it, but why don't you tell us about some of the individuals that are standing out right now?
Sure.
In wrestling.
I pour over results. Wrestlers love to be ranked and to be ranked against each other, so we like to do that. And we're going to have that updated every week. Every Wednesday morning's Freelance Star will have that list updated. And of course, and you hear from people. You're going to certainly hear from moms and dads about we should have rated Junior over Steve and Billy over Tommy. So we get into
somehow I'm not surprised, but that's what makes it interesting.
That is what makes it interesting. I think if you want to start talking about individuals, you start at the 120 pound weight class in the area. This is definitely at the top, the area's best weight. You have Junior Beltran at Mountain View, Josh Nail at Colonial Forge, your Hosky Aldiva at Eastern View. These 3 guys, they wrestle in 3 separate classifications. Beltran in 5, Nail in 6, Aldiva is in 4, and they're all legitimate state contenders. We've seen Beltran and Aldiva wrestle this year. Beltran got a close win against them. It's a good match. I'd love to see all 3 of them wrestle in some sort of wrestling triangle. I think it'd be really fun to see. And it's unfortunate, a lot of coaches probably feel this way, with the division of the state classifications now, where you have 6 tournaments instead of 3. You're handing out twice as many state titles, but you wouldn't have, say, Beltran and Nail meeting in a region and not even in a district tournament or a region tournament or even a state tournament. And these are definitely 2 of the area's best wrestlers in Nail and Beltran, and then an Aldiva is certainly worth talking about.
Jared Swan's got to be in that discussion, though, when you talk about best wrestlers in the area.
I'll tell you, if we were handling out the wrestler of the year right now, Swan is certainly in the mix. He's won against everybody. He's beaten everybody he's facing. He's winning with pins. He's faced good competition. He has a win against Colonial Forge in his weight class. Jared's having a great year. He has state place winner last year and has certainly built on that this year.
Some other great wrestlers in the area, though. There's a hot freshman out of Colonial Forge, Mark Garofalo.
Yeah, Mark is a Colonial Forge family member. A lot of those kids that you see at Forge, it's the brother of another previous great wrestler. His older brother is an all-area type. And Mark is a freshman wrestling 106, is having a great year. And 106 is one of those weight classes where a freshman can really come up and stand out and do well. You know, the last year's 3A champion from Forest Park would have been in 6A this year. He's gone. He was a graduate, so it's probably maybe a close to a wider open weight class. I think Mark's got a good chance, good name, and you know the only way you can ever be a 4-time state champion is to win one your freshman year. So you know I'm sure Mark's got his eyes on that.
These nuggets of wisdom. How about that? Well, speaking about winning it last year, Brian Ramey,
Yep.
defending state champion at the 113 level, 113 pounds.
Yeah, and he's up to 32 this year. It's it's a tough weight. And when you start to get in those 30s, the high 20s and the 30s and the 40s, there's a lot of kids who weigh that much. There's a lot of competition, but certainly Brian, a defending state champion, has got a good shot to come back and do something big at the state tournament. And then, speaking of 138, Forge has Jeff Stone is back at 138, and he's missed a lot of time by injury this year, but is back. He was back on the mat last week. Colonial Forge wrestled the Virginia Duels, a pretty prestigious tournament. They were in the best of the classifications there at that tournament, and Jeff was back wrestling with Colonial Forge and had a good weekend.
Great.
So his return, that's another weapon for Forge at 38.
Yeah. How about Logan Sharina, a contender there at 160?
Yeah, you look at Logan, and that sort of falls into the whole Easterview thing. Easterview's they were second in the AA last year to, of course, Christiansburg, who was great. And now Christiansburg has gone down to 3A. Easterview is there, still in 4A, and they've got, Ramey's there. Logan Sharina's back, Austin Jenkins. They've got several kids, real nice wrestlers, a nice group. When you talk about teams that have team aspirations, you probably start with Easterview and 4A.
Okay, well, talk about the team aspirations. I mean,
Sure.
there's several schools that have aspirations at least.
Sure, I think after you go to Easterview, then you go to Colonial Forge, and Colonial Forge is always a contender. They're just so deep. They've got a good wrestler at just about every weight. There's a couple holes I'm sure they'd like to improve in, but they're heavyweights. They're kids 160 and above. They're just so solid there. Nobody really spectacular. Chris Carter, Anthony Carter, Patrick Grayson, Robert Winters. Maybe there's not an individual state champion there, but if they find place winners among those kids and they're all very solid wrestlers, then that's where Colonial Forge starts to talk about having a chance to be a state champion for sure. And then I think in 5A, Mountain View, do they have enough? I'm not sure. You talk about Beltran, you talk about Swan. These are state contenders. Talk about Russell Ramsey, Benjamin Bolin. Do they have enough pieces to go with Beltran and Swan and contend? And
when you talk about the contention at the state level, it's a little bit different because the individuals have to earn their way into that state tournament, right? So it's a different way of handling a team event.
Yeah, as opposed to for instance, tennis, you could go win a state tennis team title by doing well enough and bringing everybody with you, or cross country, you advance as a team. Mm-hmm. In wrestling, your individuals have to earn their own way up, and that's how Colonial Forge has won state titles as a team, not necessarily by having the most state champions, but they've got a whole flood of kids. They'll have 7 place winners or 8 place winners, and that's how you're going to score a lot of points in a team format state tournament.
Exciting. Some big events coming up in wrestling.
Yeah, we're getting to the point now where the conference tournaments are starting to come into focus. Kids are starting to fall into the weight class they're going to belong in. Sort of answering some questions there where you've had kids bounce around. And, that's going to come together in the next few weeks, and we're going to get into conference tournament time. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Wonderful. Exciting.
Yeah.
Well, that's a look at the wrestling in the area. Let's take a look now at some of the other sports. Other area high school sports, we have a big weekend coming up in gymnastics, a tournament at Colonial Forge this Saturday, Justin.
Yeah, this Saturday it's the annual Winterfest. They get together every year. The girls are spending all season sort of going to these invitationals around Manassas and Richmond area and so on. This is the weekend where they're going to be competing in Stafford County. So if you're there, you're around town, and you want to see the best high school gymnasts, they're all going to be at Colonial Forge, all 5 Stafford schools, 7 other non-area schools, starting at 11 o'clock Saturday morning. They'll go to about 4.
Sounds exciting, and with the Olympics coming up, it sort of gets you into the fever for that, right?
It's sort of like Winter Olympics, Summer Olympics, but you still, it's still sort of an Olympic sport, right? And the gymnastics around here is pretty strong. You talk about Stafford has always had fielded a strong team. They've got another group this year, and Colonial Forge has 3 really nice freshmen that we write about in this week's Gymnastics Notepad. They've got a nice team too. I think the local teams this year are pretty strong.
Excellent, excellent. Well, if you're in the area, and feel free to stop by Colonial Forge to check it out. It should be fun. Well, that will do it for our first installment of Varsity 360. Certainly appreciate you watching, hoping that this has been an informative and interesting little segment for you, focusing on area high school sports. We certainly enjoy talking about it. There's some wonderful stories out there. We would love to hear suggestions from you on what you like, what you'd like to hear us talk about, and what you'd like to see on the show. Please feel free to contact me via Twitter. I am at Mark Coleman, V2SN. Certainly looking forward to hearing those comments, and hope that you check back next week right here at Fredericksburg.com for the next installment of Varsity 360. For the Virginia Varsity Sports Network, I'm Mark Coleman. Thanks for watching, everyone.